Welcome everybody. I've got my 2003 Excursion with some alternator charging problems, so I need to go ahead and replace my alternator. This is probably the third or probably fourth alternator that I've had to do. I've gone ahead and upgraded it to a higher amp, as well as I'm going to be doing some cable upgrades. So let's go ahead and see what we got going on right now. This is the new alternator that I've got. It's a 310 amp for stereo systems. So I've gone ahead and put that in there. I've had to adapt the top a little bit, but I'm going to have an extra hot mount, not just the stock factory hot lead, but I'm going to have another hot mount going over to a fuse block on the side over here, 250 amp. And then I've got my battery, and this is a diesel, and so I've got a second battery over on that side. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add some more connection points to the battery terminals. So I've got a winch, probably going to have a stereo amps possibly later on, at least allow that upgrade to happen. And then also the additional ground and additional hot lead. So let's go ahead and take a look at the different parts that I'm going to be using. So here I am in the garage. I've got the different parts I'm going to be using for the battery upgrades and the cabling. So I'm going to have some 2-aught cable, I'm going to have some big crimp terminals, and also some upgraded battery terminals. So I'm going to be using what I've got here in front of me. These are Hydra Marine terminals. So they're really difficult to find, and a lot of them are out of stock or discontinued. But I've got a 5-terminal piece here, 3-terminal, and then again the same for the grounds. I've got some covers for the hot leads, and then this is going to be my 250 amp large fuse. So these are the different parts I'm going to use for attaching the batteries. And then over here I've got my 2-aught cable connectors. These are going to be some frame connectors or pass-through grounds, and then of course these are going to be crimped. So I've got my crimper there, and then my shrink loom, and this has got the weather protectant gel inside of it. So once I heat it up and it shrinks, it'll also have that protective seal from the elements. So these are the components that I'm going to be using. It's going to be taking some time to get my measurements. I'm going to be having to crimp one end of the cable to a terminal, get that fitted in place because this cable is so thick and the copper twists inside the strands. It's going to have a natural feel to where it wants to relax. So I'll need to go ahead and get those links put to the right locations where it's at a natural rest. So I'm not putting a lot of force into the cable even at rest. So we're trying to get that to lay nicely, mark, crimp, having it oriented right so the terminal is also oriented with the cable right. I'm going to go ahead and start getting this stuff laid out and getting it adapted to the new system. Alright, as you can see, I got a little bit of work done. So I got my 2-aught cable right here. I've got my high amp alternator with the 2-aught cable connected to it. And then over here, I've got my fuse, high amp fuse, and then my cable that runs around. So right now, I've gone ahead and put the end on. Of course, I've got my shrink wrap on before and the cover for the nut to protect it. So we can go ahead and get that heat shrink on there, and then we can hook that up to the positive terminals there. So a little bit of work still to be done, but we're moving along. So here I've got still again the alternator, my new hot lead 2-aught cable over to my fuse, and then I'm going to need to now run the other end of that fuse block to the 5-post terminal. So I've got my connector already on the block here, so I know where it's going to fit. I'm going to trim this, heat shrink my battery protector cover, and then once I get that in place, then I can get the right shape and route and cut for this other end here. So first I'm going to trim this end up and get that connector on there. All right, so I've got alternator in, the alternator hot lead on the alternator side, the alternator hot lead to the fuse block completed towards the battery. Now I just need to hook up this battery terminal here. So I'm gonna go ahead, get my connector on this post. That way I'll know what length to cut the cable, because I'll be able to have the connectors as they're going to be at rest. So I can go ahead, move this cable in, look for the right angles so that it's not, I don't want it rubbing on anything over here. Mark that. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead, cut this cable, get that end on, and we'll go. I also want to mark the orientation of the top of the cable so that way I know how to orient this spade connector on the right orientation. That's what we've got so far. And then we've got the hot side, which is going to come now over in front along the radiator, and then it's going to connect over to the battery. Now, because this is a diesel and it's got 2 batteries, it's got a crossover cable. That crossover cable runs across from the passenger side battery over along the radiator and then over to the driver's side battery. So I've gone ahead and removed the original one, and we're going to go ahead and put a connector on the driver's side or the passenger side, get that connected, get the cable laying in its natural resting state so I can get it nice and smooth coming over, and then we'll get that routed over to the driver's side, and again get that length cut, get the end on there, get that shrink wrap on there, and get it connected. One thing I'm not going to be showing right now is the split loom. I don't have any that fits over the outer diameter of this 2/0 cable, so I've got to order some. Once that comes in, I'll go ahead and put that on to protect the wire all the way around to keep the abrasion and rubbing down so it won't cut into and short out. All right, let's go ahead and work on getting this crossover cable made now.